Do you think we're doing enough from our part here in the U.S.?
No, I don't. And when you look at the track record that President Biden and his administration have, on average, since he took office, 200,000 illegal immigrants have come across the border. And the result of that, and this is after talking to the 29 counties that I represent, the sheriffs here, Nick Hanna, and sheriffs in Ector County in Midland, that crime has gone up so incredibly much. And most of that crime is related to drugs, and the drugs are coming across the southern border. And it's not just that. It's the tragedies of the 53 people who perished in the back of the tractor trailer south of San Antonio this summer. It's the tragedies of people who are being trafficked, who are entering into an indentured servitude, which is basically modern-day slavery. That's what I've seen on my trips to the border, and it's incredibly tragic that law and order has been abandoned.
Just talking about how it's affecting Americans, especially those that live in border cities.
You know, I was in McAllen this past weekend, and people that I come across that don't have anything to do with politics or aren't Border Patrol agents, it's incredibly devastating to those communities, to their lives, to their churches and to their schools and to the hospitals and to everything that they have, because it is an abandonment of law and order. And instead of having a legal way and an orderly way with consequences, they tell me there's no consequences, so the numbers that we're seeing have skyrocketed to a point that it's out of control.
And just talking about, you mentioned drugs, and we've also covered a lot of fentanyl. What are some of the other drugs that you've seen that have been transported to here?
Well, we're seeing all of them, but fentanyl is the #1 killer of Americans. Last year, 110,000 people lost their lives to fentanyl. I want to put this in perspective. That is basically taking a 737 jet with about 300 people on board every single day and crashing that jet. If we had 2 days of those airplanes crashing, 600 people, if we had 2 days in this country, we would stop everything to figure out the cause of that. Fentanyl has killed people here in San Angelo, in Odessa, in Midland, and everywhere through the United States. It's poisoning people, and the cartels are using it to lace other drugs and other prescriptions with that for the effects. We have to stop this, and this is exactly why I go down to the border, to understand what is causing it. And it comes back to one thing: it's the consequences, the lack of consequences.
I saw that you did a Facebook Live talking about some of the issues at the border and how it's inconsistency. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
You know, during the previous administration, there were 110 miles of border wall that were appropriated. That was paid for. And yet only 20 miles have been built. And when President Biden took office, he stopped that. And the Facebook Live that I did was from a portion of that should have been built. But it's not just about a wall. It's about giving Border Patrol agents and other law enforcement the resources that they deserve and that they need. And all of them are screaming out to say, help me. They want the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, to help them. And it's technology, it's resources, it's more manpower, it's all of the above. But more than that, it's the political will. It's the political will that will stop this massive amount of influx of what is ultimately crime that's devastating our communities.
And just talking a little bit about the border agents, what are some issues that they're facing?
I mean, the recruitment, the retention, the mental health. You know, they kind of describe it like this. It's like Groundhog Day, that every day they come in, and instead of being out in the field doing the mission of securing the border from terrorists or from criminals or from gang members, they're relegated to an administrative post. Up to 70% per shift of Border Patrol agents are now processing instead of actually securing.
And since you mentioned mental health, a service member assigned to the Operation Lone Star died in Eagle Pass by a self-inflicted gunshot with his duty weapon Tuesday morning. What did you think when you heard this?
It's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. I mean, as a military member, you want to know that even if it's hard to do your job, that your boss backs you up, that your commander backs you up. And I think right now a lot of these Border Patrol agents, a lot of the Customs and ICE agents are questioning that. We have to do better. This country is better than that.
And what are some actions that should be taken to prevent this from happening? Some resources that maybe aren't available right now?
Well, when it comes to mental health resources, I mean, we have to be able to provide, as a federal government, all federal law enforcement, all military personnel, and their families the resources that they need. But More broadly, it just comes back to having the political will to allow these agents to do their job, something that this administration has failed to provide our Border Patrol agents with.
What would be a proposed solution for this, for people that do want to come here legally, want to go to school, maybe get a job, and have a future here? What would be a proposed solution?
You know, certainly we need immigration reform. Step one has always been security. There are many ideas out there. For instance, if you're coming to this country and you're seeking asylum, we don't need law enforcement agents to do that processing. That needs to be part of Customs and Immigration Service. The process takes too long. It's cumbersome, but I want people to also remember this, that the United States of America immigrates legally 1 million people on average per year. That is far and above greater than any other country on earth. So we are already doing a tremendous amount. We need the help from Mexico. Policies like Remain in Mexico, the migrant protection protocols, policies that work with the Northern Triangle countries to stem the flow will help provide an orderly line and an orderly process instead of the out-of-control chaos we see now.
Do you think Abbott's actions of sending buses of migrants to sanctuary cities was the right move?
Well, certainly those buses have been going to the interior of the United States. Just get on a flight out of McAllen right now. My flight out of McAllen this past weekend, about a third of the plane was filled with migrants. About a third, and that's actually low from the previous flights that I've had. So this is not new. I think what's new is that the cities like New York and Chicago, San Francisco, and others have claimed proudly that they are sanctuary cities, that they have the capacity to take migrants in. Okay, well, we're listening because 4.2 million people have come across the border illegally since Biden took office. That's 13% of the population of Texas. We are past capacity in the state of Texas. So those cities who have proclaimed proudly that they have capacity, they can be a part of the solution. And I think that's what Governor Abbott did.
And we've seen the actions, obviously, that he's taken. What other actions do you hope that he's going to take?
Well, it's more the actions that the president needs to take, that the Secretary of Homeland Security needs to take. Number one, we need consequences. We have consequences. As part of the legislative branch, we have laws on the books. They are being ignored by the administration. We have to make sure that the President of the United States understands how serious this is. I invite him to the border. Please come to Eagle Pass with me. I've asked him, I've asked Kamala Harris, I've asked the entire administration to come. I've asked the Department of Homeland Security and the Committee on Homeland Security to hold hearings and to understand this, and they still fail to do that.
What has been the response that you've received when you've invited them?
Well, it's no response. And the person that was placed in charge of the border crisis, the Vice President, Kamala Harris, has still failed to go to the border. And it's so disappointing. For those of us who live, within a couple of hours, like right here in San Angelo, or for those that live in the Rio Grande Valley or Eagle Pass, Laredo, Del Rio, El Paso, that are dealing with this every single day, they deserve, regardless of your political leanings, they deserve to have the president come and see it firsthand. This is a crisis that killed 110,000 people last year. This is a crisis that 14 and 15-year-old girls are being assaulted every day because of. It's because of his lack of action, and we need him to take action.
Because there's a lot of stuff that is happening, like you mentioned, at the border with even the migrants itself.
Absolutely. The thing that strikes me when I go down there, I look into especially these young women's eyes, and I ask them if it's dangerous. They look away immediately, and they shake their heads. That's tragic. We know 30% of them, at least, and that number is woefully low, I fear, but we know that they're being assaulted on their journey 2, 3, 4 weeks from wherever they're coming, Venezuela, South America, the Northern Triangle countries, and Central America. It's a very dangerous journey, and then when they get here, whatever amount they've paid, $4, $5, $6, $10,000, that still is not the end of the story. Unfortunately, the cartels and the traffickers still have their thumb on those people's lives. It's tragic.